So this video is going to be why Strand games suck. Now it's kind of a joke a little bit because Death Stranding is technically the only Strand game. We're going to talk about, I guess, essentially what this Strand game is, and more so, how not to defend this game. And I will be basically arguing from the point that this game sucks. Now, have I played this game? No. Have I watched multiple reviews that are both positive and negative of this game? Yes. Have I watched a lot of gameplay of this game? Yes. Have I watched all the cutscenes that are a story of this game? No. If you are the kind of person who thinks that I can't say a game sucks without physically playing it, I disagree. I've got enough information about this game to at the very least tell you how you and a lot of your peers are probably poorly defending this game. And it's going to come down to basically about three main points, okay? The first thing is, you should actually, if you intend to defend Death Stranding, you should actually defend Death Stranding. A lot of people think the best way to do this, to say Death Stranding is a good game, is to nitpick at the arguments of people who say Death Stranding sucks. This is not in your best interest. You should try to sell this game. Out of all the comments I've read on multiple different videos, I have not seen a lot of people defend anything, like actually defend anything about this game except for the graphics, the storyline, and that's it. That's not very good. Now, I know there are a lot of superficial gamers who do care overmuch about things like graphics, and then there's people who jerk off about games that look like they came out on DOS, like Undertale. So exactly how important are graphics? Some, but people overinflate the importance of graphics. They are not majorly important. A lot of very high-selling games are not graphically spectacular. GTA 5 is kind of a moderate example. Fallout 4 is actually kind of ugly in a lot of ways. High-selling game. There's hits like Undertale. Virtually anything that's put out by Nintendo is a decade or more behind the rest of the industry graphically. Nobody who plays Nintendo games seems to fucking care. So I'm going to ask you, do graphics make or break the quality of the game? I would say objectively, not subjectively, and those are two words we're going to get to in a second. The answer is no. Graphics help, but they are not the make or break point for a game. Is story the make or break point for a game? I think story matters more than graphics. But is story the make or break point for a game? Well, how many games have you played that actually literally don't have a story? Or have a very minimal story? Or the story is far and away not the focus of the game? How about Call of Duty? Sports or wrestling games. What else? There's a lot of low-tech games that have a very rudimentary, like, this is the setting you're in, go. You know, a lot of games throughout history like that. Now, some of the most beloved games throughout history have a story that is coherent and drives the progression of the game. So story matters, but it's not all that matters. What matters, no matter what, about a game? The gameplay, folks. And nobody is defending the gameplay of Death Stranding. This is a red flag. And I'll tell you why. The gameplay of Death Stranding sucks. And that's not an opinion. It's a fact. I will try to, in brief, explain why it's an objective fact that the gameplay of Death Stranding sucks, and that's a major thing that works against the game, even if the graphics are awesome, and even if I haven't had the story spoiled for me, nor will I spoil at any point of the story whatsoever to you at all. If the story's great and the graphics are great, maybe the game can get along, but the gameplay does suck, and you would be incredibly hard-pressed to convince anybody otherwise. And a lot of people who like this game aren't trying for a reason. But the last thing I'm going to have to tell you is, I just said something objectively sucks. The gameplay of Death Stranding sucks, because it does. That is a statement of fact, in that I am asserting that it is a fact. It is not up to your opinion whether or not the gameplay of Death Stranding sucks. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, who are you to say? Some people like the gameplay. Some people like things that suck. Some people like storylines and graphics enough to forgive things that suck. A lot of people like the gameplay of Undertale enough to not mind that the graphics of Undertale objectively suck. Because they do. So, what these people often love to say, and they think it's the smartest thing ever. They say, you cannot make objective value statements about art. There is no shortage of people in this world who believe this. There is, in fact, an entire school of philosophy that asserts that you cannot make objective value statements about art, and therefore there is no such thing as good art or bad art, which is how you get Andy Warhol introducing into an art museum a literal urinal that he has extracted from a men's room in a bar, put it there, and said, art. This is how you get people who make splatter paintings all over the place, and because Jackson Pollock was the first to do it, surely Jackson Pollock was a genius, therefore splattering paint on a canvas in a way that a literal fucking monkey could do, a child could do, an invalid could do, a robot could do. That's art. There are people who think that is true. Those people are wrong. Art has a point. And for all the people who love to not make a point about anything, or they love to just make up whatever point in their head and never have to actually engage something, but they just engage in literal sophistry, which is to say that what is in their head is the only thing that is true, and objective reality is false. Well then, those people are making something different. Now, there is objective facts about Death Stranding. It's about a character. That character is played by Norman Reedus. You walk from point A to point B delivering packages. That is objectively factual statements. It's not open to interpretation. There are BTs that impede your progress. There is terrain that impedes your progress. The setting is a post-apocalyptic America. These are facts. They are not up for debate. And now if I say, and here's where we get into interesting parts, I say, this game is a walking simulator because almost all you do is watch cutscenes, yes, and then walk from point A to point B. And a lot of people are like, walking simulator's a bad word. Well, why is it a bad word? I'll tell you why. Because walking simulators suck. Why do they suck? Because you cannot engage a walking simulator. You basically watch a walking simulator. Now there is 9.5 hours of cutscenes, I believe, in Death Stranding, which means that is already a point where you can like that part of Death Stranding. Cutscenes and storylines do matter, and I've heard that this game is exceptional in those regards, but you do not play a cutscene. Now, at least Death Stranding, you do engage the environment, because you don't just walk forward on a one-dimensional line or two-dimensional line. You walk up and down and side to side. Now, a lot of people have said that this game is about the importance of paved roads. Well, another problem with this game is, in fact, that a lot of the interesting features about the game that people tout as cool, the fact that you can actually put structures in the game to improve progress, bridges, zip lines, ropes and ladders and shit like that, and that you can actually see ropes and bridges and whatnot that other people have put in the game in a kind of instancing way like Dark Souls does and like Shadow of War does, Middle-earth Shadow of War. So the problem with that is, if you're not required to make your own improvements to the terrain, well, a major part of the video game has just been lost. You don't have to engage the terrain yourself, and you do not have to improve the terrain yourself. You can benefit from other gamers doing it for you, meaning that you're not playing terrain improvement or terrain traversal. That's a problem. That means you're not playing the game. A lot of people have touted that you actually have to balance to keep yourself from falling and losing or damaging packages, and that you actually have to carefully adjust your character's loadout and the outfits he is wearing. There's also a function built into the game that can auto-sort the weight and distribution of all the packages you are carrying for you, meaning that you do not have to engage the package distribution part of the gameplay, meaning that you don't have to play it. That's a problem. One of the most important things I've seen in a negative review of this game is that this person says over and over again, basically, that the major problem that makes this game bad, that makes it below average and therefore bad, not the worst game ever, but bad, is that the game trivializes what limited gameplay it has. Almost everybody I've seen who's talked about this game, positive or negative, mentions the fact that you don't really have to engage the supernatural enemies of the game, the so-called BTs. You can walk away from them. That very few of them can actually harm or kill you. There is eventually human enemies that actually shoot at you and require you to shoot back, so there's actually combat at some point in this game, and it is rudimentary third-person shooter structure that is something that you've seen in a bazillion games for the past 15 or 20 years. It's not new, it's not innovative, it's not good. It is beneath the standards from an industry that has been innovating since 15 or 20 years ago. It is simple, just like the movement is simple. A lot of people have compared it to Skyrim, because it is actually a pain in the ass to get around the terrain in this game. But even if you weren't taking advantage of the people who build bridges and ramps and whatnot, you can still, if you're careful enough, just jump up the sides of mountains. And just like in Skyrim you get a horse. In this game, if you get the motorcycle, there's almost no terrain, vertical, bumpy, whatever, that the motorcycle cannot cross. Which again, get the motorcycle, trivialize the game. Also, the motorcycle does not seem to be prone to the balance mechanics that are fundamental to the walking point in the game, meaning that get the motorcycle, trivialize every single part of movement. And virtually all of this game, besides the story and the cutscenes and the graphic, is movement. And if you render the movement meaningless, you have rendered the entire game meaningless. In order to defend Death Stranding, you must tell me why it's no big deal that the gameplay sucks. You must tell me, if you disagree with the fact that the gameplay sucks, why is the gameplay good? Guess what? Even if you somehow invalidate everything I said about why the gameplay sucks, you don't get to gameplay is good. You get to a zero line of the gameplay does not suck. You did not get to gameplay is good. Why is the gameplay good? What, because the graphics and storyline are good? Graphics and storyline, dude, I could, on DOSBox, have a two-dimensional game, they call it 2.5D. I could make a Wolfenstein game about walking that even includes going vertically up. They have one, it's called Doom. But Doom also has other facets of gameplay besides walking. Quake almost doesn't, but in fact does require you to do more than walk. And jump even. So, the joke is, you have to admit, even if you say this game is good, that all you need to say this game is good is cutscenes, world building, graphics. I don't believe anybody can say that anything I just said about the gameplay means it doesn't suck. And now, a lot of these people don't try. They say, oh, there's no such thing as objective, and some people find that gameplay you just described as good. Those people have very bad taste. Those people have the benefit of looking forward to thousands of games that do movement, traversal, exploration, climbing, even fetch quests, which is basically what this game is. Something that's universally panned in games is things like repetitive fetch quests or randomly generated cookie cutter quests of go here, do the thing, come back, which is in all sorts of games, as something to artificially lengthen the game. Like Fallout 4 has main story missions, main side missions, and then there are another settlement needs your help, Preston Garvey. That's an ambient cookie cutter auto-generated quest. Go here, kill thing, come back. Go here, drop off thing, come back. That's the core everything of Death Stranding besides the plot. That's not fun to me. That's not going to make me buy the game. A lot of people don't play it. Well, a lot of people are not playing it. Death Stranding is not selling anywhere near as well as MGS5 or Phantom Pain did. And Kojima-san, your Lord and Savior, is saying oh, this game's not for American sensibilities. By the way, the game is selling way under projections in Japan, by the way. It's not just, oh, the Americans are boorish and stupid and don't understand my hoity-toity, smell my farts, R-tour bullshit. It's no, Kojima, you made a bad game. Death Stranding has been, a lot of people have basically said that Death Stranding is best experienced as just watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Or maybe, at best, watch a Let's Play of it. But for God forbid, it's more fun to watch somebody else fall off a fucking cliff and drop all their packages into a fucking river than to experience that problem yourself. I'm inclined to agree. And you're able to argue. A lot of people, and I'll say this for the last time about the subjectivity thing, some people claim that because we can argue, that means it's all subjective. No, because we can argue, there is a right and wrong answer. The question isn't what is the feeling of blue. Okay, that's a subjective question. The question is, does this game suck? What makes a game suck? Is the gameplay bad? Is the graphics bad? Is the plot bad? Is it fun to play? A lot of people say it's not fun to play. A lot of the people who say it is fun to play don't seem to be defending the gameplay of the game. They seem to be just throwing a fit that anybody would fucking shit talk their Lord and Savior. And then they usually project their own issue because they are Kojima fanboys who masturbate to the waifus in Metal Gear Solid. They think that the way to win is to just say oh, you're just a fan, you're just a hater. Well, no, you're just a fanboy. I played Metal Gear Solid 3, it was fine. I played Metal Gear Solid 2 and I fucking hated it. I played Metal Gear Solid 4 and I hated it. I played Metal Gear Solid 5 and I hated it. I actually liked the fucking around part of Metal Gear Solid 5, but at any of the point where I actually had to do something like one of the main storyline missions, I hated the fucking gameplay loop. I hated the fact that you had to wait in real life hours for money to get generated so you can perform certain actions. I fucking hated that the difficulty goes low, 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 really high, low, 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 really, really, really high. And by the way, much like a game like XCOM, where I see it coming, if you don't have certain weapons and you run into the fucking skull units in Metal Gear Solid 5, your chances of killing them are significantly fucking lower than if you walked into that mission where they randomly appear out of the fucking blue if you had a rocket launcher, or if you could very easily call in helicopter support and you could afford to do so and you had the helicopter outfitted in such a way that the helicopter wouldn't fucking blow up and fuck you over if it fails to kill the fucking ghost for you. I fucking hate, I about rage quit the game at that point on because I was only liking it so much until I hit a wall where I was like, that was infuriating. Okay? Now, there's a right and wrong way to get around that mission. The problem is, what I was sold on for the first 10 hours of that game was that there wasn't really a right and a wrong way to play. There might have been ways that were easier, but everything was viable so long as you didn't get shot enough to die or didn't fail a major objective. I hit a wall where I required a certain amount of firepower in a completely open space where stealth and cover-based mechanics were not an option for me to deal with these fucking things. I didn't have D-Horse to run away, and the game auto-saves so that no matter what, when I load that save, it will spawn me directly in the middle of that mission, a split second before the enemies that I don't know how to kill spawn. I would have to start that save file over to rectify that fucking situation. That's objectively bad, folks. That's garbage. And a lot of people have shit on the storyline of that game and said it's unfinished and it doesn't make any sense and it invalidates a lot of the Metal Gear Solid canon. I can't speak to the truth or falsity of that fucking statement, but I've heard fanboys say it. And yet those fanboys, aware of these many flaws with MGS4 and MGS5, and even 2 and some parts of 3 and whatnot, forgive all of this. Because some people will accept giant shovelfuls of fucking bullshit out of sheer gratitude for a game that came out a decade ago that is not the game we're talking about. We're not talking about MGS5 or 2 or 3 or 2. We're talking about Death Stranding. And people can't defend it. I got told by a couple of the people who did try to defend it to me today that I should run off somewhere else and call some other people libtards. I didn't tell this person what my political affiliation was. I mentioned no candidates. I didn't mention what country I was from. Liberals aren't even necessarily a political party in every country of the world. I didn't say what my race was or my sex or my sexuality or how many Kojima games I have or have not played. And the particular person who used the libtard argument on me, I didn't even call that guy a fanboy, although I did call many other people that. The amount of straw man arguments where people were literally not reading what I was saying, but were thinking that I was saying one thing because their brain operates on nothing but stereotypes. They believe that what they're prejudicially biased to believe is happening in their head is what's happening in real life, otherwise known as sophistry. Objective reality doesn't matter. This guy believes that anybody who would tell him Death Stranding sucks is some Trump-supporting, redneck, Confederate, transphobe, homophobe, blah, 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 Brexit-supporting, fucking who knows what. Nobody in the thread besides me, nobody in the thread but him mentioned that. Not anybody else in the thread, and not me who he's talking to. What the fuck? There was another guy who did something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. And since I talked about 22 minutes, we're not going to go into any more of those examples. I'd have to look them up anyways. Fuck that. The point is, it is possible to stress the value of the storyline enough to say, okay, the game is a walking simulator and an interactive movie. But it's a good one, and you should buy it anyways, and here's why. That's how you defend the game. The game is a walking simulator, but the actual walking, running, and climbing is fun, and believe it or not, there are some people who've said it, and again, since I haven't played the game, I cannot deliberately, personally invalidate the statement where some people said all the people who have been dropping packages all over the place are doing that on purpose. That's actually not a point in the game's favor. If the game is not at legitimate risk of making me drop or break packages against my will, then the game is not challenging me and therefore doesn't have gameplay, folks. If I don't fucking drop a package at least once, if I don't fucking fall off and lose a bunch of packages in a river just at least once, or if I don't crash a car carrying a bomb that explodes, or lose some other kind of fragile cargo at some place at one point, at least once, then the game is not actually engaging me. I would have to be a drooling invalid retard to fail, which means it's not really a game, it's a simulator again. You see how even when you say, oh, the people who are complaining about the falling off of shit and complaining about the train thing, well, they're failing on purpose. That's actually not a point for you. It's a point against you. That means that you're telling me that I can't fail. And if I can't fail, it's not a game. Just like if I can't be wrong, if my argument cannot be falsified, we're actually not having an argument at all. We are talking gibberish past each other. Value judgments exist in everything except for the most ephemeral, poetic concepts. What is the feeling of sky is a subjective statement that doesn't have a discernible value. Does a game suck is a legitimate objective value statement that can be argued, and you can present evidence for why a game does not suck. And just because there isn't a definitely going to be a winner and somebody's not definitely going to concede defeat at the end of that argument does not mean that we live in this subjective world where value doesn't exist. If you believe that, that means you're objectively a fucking retard. Thanks for watching, folks.